Hello there, all my dragon friends. Welcome, welcome. My name is Ariel, and this is Dragon Tail Tarot. Today we are going to be doing a little foray into something new to the channel, and that is going to be my Dragon Book Club. That is going to be our first book that we're going to go reading through. Is going to be Astrology for the Soul by Jan Spiller. So today we will be reading the first chapter of this book. If you have this book already in your library, feel free to read along. If not, this is going to serve as somewhat of an audiobook. I may interject and add my own thoughts here and there as I read the chapter, but this book is all about the North and the South Node. The North and the South Node are in all of our astrology charts, and this is a great book. I've had it for a number of years, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro on it. The great thing about this is she makes it pretty easy. There is actually a couple of pages that show where the North and the South Node have been, starting in 1899 all the way through 2051. So we're covering a great span of years. So you're most likely to find where your North and South Node are if you have this book. If not, these can easily be found in your personal natal chart if you have one. This book was originally published in 1997. So excellent. It's been around for a while, and I really enjoy it. So first, before I get going into each chapter, what I'm going to do is just give this brief synopsis of what the nodes are so that you can have just a little bit of an idea of this. So that can be found in the How to Use This Book. She has a whole section about how to use this book. So what are the nodes? The nodes of the moon are not planetary bodies. They are points formed by the moon's orbit around the Earth, intersecting with the Earth's path around the sun. The direction of the nodes is counterclockwise, so it doesn't go in the same direction as the rest of our planets. It's a different energy, it's a different motion. The North Node is the ascending node, or the point closest to our North Pole, and the South Node is the descending node, the point closest to our South Pole. They are always exactly 180 degrees apart, so you will see them in your chart as, you know, that opposition energy, right? It's going to be that opposition aspect because they're going to be directly across from each other. Some astrologers use the true node calculation, which takes into account the wobbling of the moon's orbit, and some astrologers use the mean node, which does not take the wobbling into account. She uses the true nodes. I use the true nodes. The true nodes and mean node positions are never more than 1 degree 45 minutes apart from each other, so it's really not going to cause an issue on accuracy there. And as I always say, the nodes can be seen in your chart. It looks like the little cup upside down. That is where you're coming from. That's the south. That's where you're coming from. And the north is where you're headed. And that looks like the cup that's upside down that has yet to be filled. My personal feeling about the way the nodes work is it very much shows, you know, what your past lifetime incarnations have been, that you can see in the South Node where you've come from, the lifetimes that you've lived and fulfilled, and the North is very much where you're headed to now. I see the nodes as a lifetime sort of path that you walk, or a mountain that you climb. Me being a Capricorn, I guess that's a mountain that I climb, and it's not something that you learn overnight. In many ways, you could say that the South Node is, you know, stuff that you've done so many times that it almost becomes very habitual. But the North Node is where you're trying to break free of those old habits, potentially negative ones and otherwise, to really fulfill the other side of that coin. So today we are going to start with chapter number 1. That will be the North Node in Aries, and that can be found starting on, let's see, would be page 19. So let's go ahead and start out with this. If you have a North Node in Aries, that means your South Node is in Libra. I'm the opposite. I have my South Node in Aries and my North Node in Libra. So this is the flip side of my personal chart. So This would also apply to you if you happen to have your North Node in the first house. That can also give you some of that energy because the first house is the Aries house. So it will take on some of those qualities as well. So this is the chapter for people with North Node in Aries or the North Node in the first house, which would automatically give you a South Node in the opposite sign of Libra. All right, so the overview. Attributes to develop. Work in these areas can help uncover hidden gifts and talents. Independence, self-awareness, trusting one's impulses, courage, constructive self-interest, moderation in giving, and self-nurturance. Tendencies to leave behind for a North Node in Aries. Working to reduce the influence of these tendencies can make life easier and more enjoyable. Seeing oneself through others' eyes, debilitating selflessness, being Mr. or Mrs. Nice, obsessive attachment to fairness and justice, codependence, attachment to external harmony, and a tit-for-tat mentality. These are the negative qualities of Libra to leave behind that need to be people-pleasing all the time, right? North Node in Aries, you really want to trust yourself because that is the sign of the self and the identity. The Achilles heel trap to avoid the bottom line. The Achilles heel Aries North Node people need to be aware of is a preoccupation with justice. My survival is dependent on everyone playing fair with me. This thought should signal that they are on shaky ground. These folks are very giving by nature, yet their need for justice and fairness is a bottomless pit. They can start playing fair with themselves by not giving beyond a point that feels comfortable, even if they know that nothing will be reciprocated. The trap that Aries North Node people need to avoid is an unending search for an ideal committed partnership. Quote unquote, if only I can find the perfect partner, I'll feel complete within myself. The feeling of completeness they seek can only be achieved individually. It will not be the byproduct of a relationship, no matter how wonderful the partner. The bottom line is that they'll never gain enough approval from others to have permission to be themselves. At some point, they must take the risk and pursue activities that are meaningful to them. The irony is that once Aries North Nodes go in their own direction, the appropriate people will be drawn into their life to support them. So it's very important for an Aries North Node to really follow their own identity, their own path, rather than finding the partnership the paramount objective. Because once you're following your own path, the right people will come into your life. What these people really want. What Aries North Node people really want is to experience happiness, harmony, fairness, and support with one partner who they love. To achieve this, they need to be their own partner first. This is a total self-love path, by the way, guys. By getting to know themselves, they begin to do things that bring them joy and increase their level of self-nurturing so they feel strong, confident, and supported. As they treat themselves more fairly, they will feel the sense of balance and justice they seek. Only at this point can they establish a healthy partnership wherein two individuals share equally with each other without feeling debilitated. Also see codependence, right? Their talents and professions. These people need to be able to do their thing according to their own impulses without being limited by the input of others. They are the leaders, the innovators, and the pioneers. They need a profession that allows them the independence to follow their own instincts. They are successful in professions that require initiative and independent action, as surgeons, technicians, entrepreneurs, for example. From past lives, they have the gift of being able to see the other person's point of view and negotiate diplomatically to ensure fairness. This is the Libra past lifetimes here at play. They can use this innate ability to further their own success. However, in professions that emphasize mediating as a final goal, they are generally not as energized as when they use their negotiating talents to reach their own independent goals. Healing affirmations specific to Aries North Nodes. These are affirmations that are good to give yourself. When I trust myself and follow my impulses, everyone wins. Before I can support others, I have to learn how to nurture myself. I can help others best by truly being myself. It's okay not to be nice all the time. A sense of balance and strength comes from being fair with myself. Wow. Personality. the past lives. Aries North Node people have had many past lives of supporting others, and they have a natural talent for it. In past incarnations, they were housewives, secretaries, counselors, and assistants. They were the people behind the scenes who gave others energy and support. This made the others bigger and stronger because the natives refused all their own identity, power, and positive energy in supporting them. Aries North Node people also have had a lot of householder lifetimes and are accustomed to merging their energy with those in their immediate environment. To support others successfully, they developed tremendous awareness and sensitivity. Their tools were love, reassurance, gentle words of encouragement, and confidence that the other person would emerge victorious in any situation. Their focus was the other person. Whenever they saw their partner lacking confidence or needing support, they stepped right in to help. These folks never had to be asked. They are sensitive to others' needs and go out of their way to be accommodating. They have developed an incredibly loving and generous spirit. They are accustomed to giving, to being a team player, and supporting others without thoughts of self. Although they were very giving in past lives, they also had an ulterior motive. They were part of a team, and if their partner did well, it also ensured their own survival. By keeping the partner's mood harmonious, Aries North Nodes ensured that the partner would be kindly disposed and generous toward them. So they gave up paying attention to their own needs in order to devote full attention to the partner. Everything centered around keeping the partner strong and contented. In past lives, the system worked very well, but the present incarnation is not set up to work this way. In the process of supporting others, these folks extinguished their own identity. In this incarnation, their destiny is now to get in touch with the strength and power of their own vibration. That is why every time they rely on a partner to come through for them without asking directly for help, they end up feeling disappointed. Actually, this is to their advantage because depending on another prevents them from experiencing their ability to survive under their own power. So now when they sacrifice their own identity to make the other strong, they lose. The rewards they expect don't come back, and it's time to rediscover themselves. Lack of identity. Aries North Node people have spent so many incarnations supporting the identity of others that in this incarnation they have no sense of who they are. On an energetic level, they are missing the insulation of a sense of identity. When a baby is born, there's a band in its aura called identity, and people in other nodal groups have this. It acts as a shield against the strong energy fields of others. Because of it, people can interact intensely without damaging one another. For example, if Bill meets Sue on the street, he may say, "Hello, Sue," and have a tremendous amount of energy behind it. Sue responds in kind. They interact enthusiastically, and then they walk away without either having been changed. But if Bill meets an Aries North Node person, and with the same amount of energy says, "Hello, Jim," Jim is blown over. He feels overwhelmed by all that energy, owing to the weakness of the identity band in Aries North Node's aura. These natives are very sensitive to others and are easily affected by others' moods and ideas, and they need to remember to do things to fortify their self-awareness. These folks even tend to take on the identities of others. Generally, they pick up accents easily and unconsciously duplicate other people's mannerisms, even if they are only around them for a short time. Harmony is so important to them that they try to be all things to all people. One byproduct of their receptivity to others is the tremendous love that is easily sparked within them. Since their own identity is weak, they readily feel a sense of oneness when they connect with others. In this incarnation, Aries North Node people face the challenge of strengthening their sense of identity because they have no preconceived idea of self. They are open to discovering what is real and natural within themselves. It's an innocent process. Their natural impulses validate their identity, and their identity is strengthened through their actions. These folks need a lot of time alone to get to know themselves. They need a specific time each day when they can talk with themselves. Their first challenge is to find out who they are in their own right. Then they can learn how to maintain their boundaries with others. This process happens gradually. Self-discovery cannot be rushed, but Aries North Node people make progress when they resolve to pay more attention to themselves. A loving spirit. Aries North Node people have a tremendous amount of love stored up from past lives. They know about relationships, and they have received much appreciation and love in return for the help they have given others. Thus they come into this incarnation feeling loved by others. All that love shines through them and is passed on to almost everyone that they meet. They have an ability to see not just the rough edges in other people, but the loving qualities too. They perceive who others really are, and then they celebrate that truth. In that state, they feel totally high because they are fully appreciating and celebrating the glory, strength, energy, light, and life in the other person. And it makes them feel incredibly loving. Their challenge in this life is to begin to see the same beauty within themselves. Although these folks are open and loving, if others violate their space, they become angry. Then, when their not so loving part begins to emerge, they feel guilty. Yet this dark side is part of the human experience. They're discovering themselves and learning to integrate both sides of their energy. Their loving energy becomes the backdrop for the personality and mood changes that happen to us all. Their challenge is to remain centered in themselves. Aries North Node's motive of wanting to give is correct, but if they're trying to give when they feel drained, at best, they're only creating a superficial harmony. Every time they become too outwardly focused, appreciating others, and not valuing themselves, the demons within emerge to bring them back in touch with themselves. They don't want to be with people when their dark side is showing because it doesn't reflect the supportive, loving person they feel they should be, so they tend to feel guilty and go off by themselves. When actually the dark side arises, it's a good sign. It is the neglected part of themselves demanding attention. When they turn within and begin consciously loving themselves, noticing their own beauty and taking care of themselves, the demons melt away. Thus, Aries North Node people need to regularly take time to focus on themselves and see what they need to do to support themselves. Then they will be able to interact with others from a place of internal strength and harmony. My thoughts on this personally are that the dark side, or what she calls the demons, are actually the thing that needs to be recognized. They're not a bad thing at all. They're actually that part that says, hey, my boundaries have been violated and I need to step up for myself. It may feel like a dark side. It may feel like demons to the person with an Aries North Node. But in reality, this is your self-preservation, your boundaries, and your personal needs coming to the forefront, and they need to be honored. Then they aren't dark anymore. Hypersensitivity, harmony versus self-sacrifice. Having spent many past incarnations being the support system for others, Aries North Node people developed a constant openness to others' identities. They intentionally remained aware of the other person and could sense the slightest unhappiness or disharmony in that person's mood. When they focused on keeping the partner's mood happy, they shared in that mood and remained happy themselves. Although this worked well in past lifetimes, this incarnation, another person's happiness, is not enough to evoke true happiness in these folks. They don't have enough personal identity left in their battery to hold the charge from the other person. To be deeply happy in this lifetime, they must focus on developing their own identity and recharging their own battery. These folks need to tend to pacify others, saying whatever is necessary to keep the peace. When they do this, they think they're being nice and serving others, but it's only a temporary solution. It postpones a more permanent resolution that would promote a solid relationship based on the identity and integrity of both individuals. Aries North Node people are so sensitive to the atmosphere surrounding others that they tend to make maintaining a harmonious atmosphere their focus in relationships. They do need harmony in their lives to feel content, but they get into trouble when they allow their personal sense of balance to depend on another person. Then they feel they must manipulate the other person into staying harmonious with them. If you're happy, I'm happy. They think that if they balance the other person by filling in where he or she lacks strength, that person should happily reciprocate. They can't understand when others don't do their part to keep the harmony going. And they often feel they're the only ones doing their fair share. Maintaining harmony in the relationship can become a full-time job for them. But it's not set up to work that way in this lifetime. In fact, this habit can enslave both partners. The other person loses autonomy and becomes dependent on the Aries North Node to produce harmony, and Aries North Node becomes bound to the role of providing the harmony regardless of the personal cost. Sadly, because of this, relationships can become burdensome for them. What does work for them is to pay attention to the relationship with themselves. What activities promote their own feeling of inner harmony? If their balance is off, what should they give to themselves in order to regain their inner harmony? These folks want to be Mr. or Miss Nice and nice people don't upset other people. This peace at any price syndrome may lead to self-negation, which is a form of dishonesty. Their motive is one of love, but love without honesty can lead to resentment. Aries North Node people have spent so many incarnations helping others obtain their desires that they often equate supporting others with doing what the other person wants. So they sacrifice what they need to be happy in order to fill the other person's needs. In this incarnation, they are learning to reevaluate what support actually is. It is not supportive to give more than one has to give. Say that to yourself a few times there. These natives love the energy of giving to others, but if they give beyond the point of feeling comfortable, they are not really supporting the other person. If they continue to call on their inner reserves of energy, they wear out their battery and nobody wins. These folks must trust themselves. When they feel an inner resistance to giving, it is a signal to pull back and begin taking care of themselves. It does not work for them to be unaware of their separate identity. When they feed energy into the force field of the relationship, rather than to the other person as a separate entity, they create only temporary harmony at best. This is because they are feeding energy into something that's not really there. A relationship doesn't exist in physical reality. It's an energy connection between two people, and the energy constantly fluctuates as the two people have different experiences and changing moods. When the relationship is harmonious, it's the result of both partners being strong and peaceful within themselves. Aries North Nodes lose when they try to constantly prop the other person up through manipulating the energy in the relationship. However, when they encourage independence and individuality in the relationships, dealing directly with the other person and supporting him or her in being strong and separate, they win, because the other person will give back in the same way, supporting Aries North Node's independence and individuality. Participating versus hiding. Aries North Node people have such a history of being the support person that they are instinctively open to others' moods. But in this incarnation, it's a habit that can be extremely draining. They may appear to have a boundary between themselves and the other person, but it's a very thin line. In actuality, they are merged with the other person's energy field in a very codependent way. Sometimes recognizing that they end up feeling drained, these folks avoid participation. They seem to be involved, but on an energetic level, they remain inside themselves. They're still saying hello and being polite, but they're not really connected with the energy. However, when they remain totally outside the dynamics of the interaction, afterwards they end up on the other extreme and become overly excited, bouncing off the walls with excess energy. For these folks, being drained and being overly excited are two sides of the same coin, not dealing with what's actually happening in the moment. They have either given too much of themselves and feel drained, or given too little and absorbed others' energy so they feel overcharged. Both reactions are a byproduct of not being present or grounded in their bodies and responding to the situation moment by moment as a separate person. The balance lies in being consciously aware of others' energy without being consumed by it. Aries North Nodes need to stay connected to their own power and be in touch with what they can comfortably contribute. The idea is to share their talents freely, to be of service, and to give from the heart without trying to be more or less than they actually are. Aries North Node people often try to work within the dynamic of the merged energy field, theirs and the other person's. They plug into the other's energy and add whatever ingredient is needed to keep things harmonious. And they feel good about doing this as an expression of their love, but another motive may be that they want to blend their energy with others to avoid standing out as an individual. They can participate in the flow of things without being noticed. They have a fear of being acknowledged, which is in fact the fear of acknowledging themselves. Because they are so sensitive and vulnerable, they fear that being acknowledged could be overwhelming. There would be joy in having their positive aspects reflected back to them, but they fear having the negative reflected back as well. They don't want to face their demons as a result of another's feedback. Maybe they won't be liked. Maybe the other person, in order to protect himself from healing with their own demons, will lash out at them. They have a lot of concerns about the possible repercussions of being themselves, so they would rather just go along and not really be seen as an individual. However, concerns about how others will see them are a factor only when Aries North Node people seek to see themselves through others' eyes. In past lives, it was a positive thing to see themselves through their partner's eyes, as it showed them how to adjust their behavior to more effectively support the other person. However, through many lifetimes of overuse, their habit of fitting in has extinguished their own identity. In this incarnation, it is not to their advantage to see themselves through others' eyes, as this inhibits their ability to build their own sense of self. Indecision. The famous Libran energy, right? That's the Libra South Node here at work. Vacillation. When these folks make up their mind to go in a given direction, it's sometimes difficult for them to move in a straight line. Part of them may question whether or not it's what they really want, and then they consider all the other factors that might be involved. It might take them a long time to decide which direction they want to take. The process goes something like this. They make a decision and tell their friends about it, and then they have the doubts. For example, they may decide, I want to write adventure novels. Then they start thinking, I also like other kinds of books. Then they try to embrace one idea and are able to feel that this is really right. But somewhere down the line they say, no, I don't feel quite right about it. And then they're back in indecision. When Aries North Node people do make a decision, they have no problem justifying it. They can find ways to make any decision right or wrong. However, this mechanism can actually deflect them from a true knowledge of where they stand. For example, when a decision arises, they have an instinctive response, but then they think, well, I want to be fair about this, so I'll look at it from the other point of view. This causes them to become confused and lose sight of what they want. In this lifetime, Aries North Node people are developing single-mindedness. Rather than weigh everything before making a choice, they are learning the value of following their initial impulse, that's the Aries part, just to see where it goes. It's fine for them to make a decision based on their spontaneous sense of inner excitement and then put the full force of their intellect into implementing it, but it's an experiment. Later on, if they lose a feeling of rightness about it and something else excites them, they can responsibly tie up the loose ends and go on to the next thing. This is a lifetime of new beginnings for them, so it's natural that many decisions they make will be subject to change. Actually, this incarnation is not set up to be one of decision making, which usually implies considering 2 points of view and then finding a compromise. Rather than be the referee in this lifetime, these natives are supposed to be one of the points of view. That is why it is in their best interest to form the habit of noticing their first impulse, which will guide them to correct decisions. Then the vitality, confidence, and joy will come back into their lives, and it will be a blessing for everyone. A major obstacle to this single-mindedness for Aries North Node people is that they can appreciate the beauty in all their choices. Owing to past incarnations of being deeply involved with others' lives, they are accustomed to appreciating the beauty in everything outside themselves. They aren't in touch with having favorites of anything because they don't know what their own taste and preferences are. They have a tough time picking out one thing and saying, this is it. What they can do is make time to visualize different things inside themselves and learn to feel what their preferences are. For example, if asked what their favorite color is, they may waver. But if they go off by themselves, visualize the colors inside them, and tune into how they resonate with each one, they will discover their preference. When these folks have to make a decision, they often feel what the right choice is. But sometimes they're forced to decide before they've gotten in touch with their intuitive impulse. Again, visualization can help. They can take a few minutes and visualize themselves following one option to see how they feel about it in their physical body. Then they can visualize following another option and see how they feel about that. If it's an important matter and they don't have an immediate impulsive response, it's fine to take more time as they need to visualize so they can make the right choice. Risking others' judgment. If Aries North Node people allow themselves to be part of their decision-making process, they lose touch with themselves and are dissatisfied no matter how the situation turns out. In past lives, their decisions involved the team. They had to consult the other person so the outcome would work for the partnership. But in this lifetime, they want to develop their own identity, so it's better to ask themselves, how do I feel about this decision? When they tell another person their decisions, they become vulnerable to that person's approval. And since they're so sensitive, if the other person doesn't agree, then they start thinking, maybe I didn't make the right decision. So it's better for them to keep their decisions to themselves, knowing that their decisions will change as they themselves change and grow. Because Aries North Node people are influenced by what they think other people think, especially if it's someone they respect, they have a tendency to trust others' judgment above their own instincts. But in this lifetime, they're learning to take a stand for their own judgment, which has less to do with being right than discovering more about themselves. These folks fear others will judge them harshly if they make a decision that isn't based on sound logic. They see others making decisions based on logic, so if they make an impulsive decision, they think it's not as valid. However, for them, it's correct to follow impulse, whereas a member of another nodal group may be better off following logic. For Aries North Node's decisions based on their first impulse generally work out best. Then they can use logic to find the best way to implement the decision. If Aries North Node people are facing a decision and no initial impulse arises within them, it's okay not to make a decision. It may be a sign that it is not the time for them to make a choice, or that they really don't have a preference. Then it's fine to just say, I don't know. These natives always feel more comfortable responding to a situation when another point of view has already been put out on the table. Then they can either agree or disagree with that opinion. It's scary for them to offer their opinion first, but it's their specialty in this incarnation to offer innovative ideas seemingly out of nowhere. Aries North Node people are great at supporting another's decision, but in this lifetime they need to impulsively feel where they want to go, put their idea on the table, and support it 100%. In this lifetime, they are the trailblazers, right? And that's what I would say. You know, it's like whenever you come from one node to another, there's always going to be gifts that you're naturally given by the universe to get you to go in the direction that it wants you to go. Yeah, I might have to make this into two videos to cover each chapter, because I've got about enough charge on one of my batteries for an hour. So if this cuts off, I will make another video to keep going with it. So I just want to put that out there real quickly. Next, we're going into the area of personal needs, a sense of identity. Owing to so many incarnations in which they sacrificed their own identity for the sake of supporting others, Aries North Node people enter this lifetime without an inborn sense of identity. Rediscovering and reestablishing a true sense of self is now a primary need. Especially in their early years, their entire sense of self is based on how others see them. They may go along with others' definition of who they are or resist it completely. Regardless, it is not their identity. It's a reaction to others' construct of who they are. To begin the path of self-discovery, they need to ask themselves, who am I apart from other people's projections? They will find an answer only by looking inside themselves. Self-awareness. To answer for their need of self-awareness, it would be helpful for these folks to begin checking in with themselves on a regular basis. When they're not in touch with themselves, they often end up acting in extremes. With others, they feel like they have to be the light bearer, supporting, loving, self-sacrificing all the time. This represses the part of themselves that cannot possibly be that way all the time, which creates an intense polarity. They're trying to always be loving and supportive because that's the role they played in past lives, but the extremity of this positive role will also evoke the depths of darkness. If they take a closer look at the darkness, they'll see that it's really just their more assertive side, which they haven't allowed themselves to express. It's part of their yang nature, their masculine side. It's polarized because it has been suppressed over so many past lives that it's not integrated with the rest of the personality. So it may come out in a very intense way, which causes Aries North Nodes to become embarrassed and think, where did that come from? The best resolution is to stay congruent with themselves, stay inside their own energy field, and stay in touch with what's going on within them. Then when they're upset, just spontaneously communicate, gosh, for some reason I feel upset about this. Their job is to simply be themselves. When they first experiment with this, they may feel uncomfortable, but they need to trust that since their underlying motive is love, whatever comes out is going to be fundamentally correct. Aries North Node people are learning to take charge, do what they need to do for themselves, and become self-sufficient by following their desires. When they feel an impulse to do something that they know would bring them a sense of satisfaction, they need to follow through with it. Owing to the self-purification accomplished in past lives, they can trust that their impulses are not harmful to others and in fact signal the direction in which they need to go. In every area of life, the idea is to operate freely on their first impulse of what action would be best in any situation. Any resistance from the ego should be disregarded. In this way, they maintain a balance with others that is based on authenticity and taking responsibility for themselves. Since these folks are not innately aware of the value of self-sufficiency, they don't realize how much others value it. They may evoke a negative response when they start supporting someone who hasn't asked for their help. They enter the other person's force field and find out what he or she is feeling and thinking. It's fine for them to be aware of others' needs, but they are learning that others have boundaries as well, and that they themselves have boundaries too. As they learn to respect others' self-sufficiency, they begin to value self-sufficiency for themselves. Aries North Node people tend to be reactionary when they see other people taking care of themselves. They become judgmental and think that others are self-involved, uncaring, and selfish. Yet becoming involved with themselves is the very thing these folks need to do. It bothers them when they see it in others because they're not doing it themselves. When they notice quote-unquote selfishness in others, they could use it as a reminder to check in with their own needs. They must begin giving attention to themselves, even if at first they go a bit to extremes. They might begin by allotting 30 to 40 minutes of solitude for themselves every day, no matter what. In a room by themselves with no interference from the outside world, they might have a cup of tea or plan their day, write in their journal, read an inspiring book, or just sit and reflect. The point is, it's their time, and during that time they come first. If they arrange that one thing for themselves, they will be able to give to others all day long without becoming resentful. Paying conscious attention to their breathing also helps. It helps keep them in touch with their physical body. When they are with others, they could consciously take a deep breath from time to keep themselves inside their own boundaries. Some nodal groups are here to learn about selflessness, but Aries North Nodes already know about selflessness. In this lifetime, they need to learn about selfishness. I call it healthy self-love. Personally, when they stay in touch with themselves, it works for everyone. It's not logical, but it's practical. When they're being themselves, they're afraid they might hurt others, whereas being themselves actually helps others on a deeper level than they could have anticipated. But Aries North Nodes have to experiment with being selfish. That is, acting on an idea solely because it gives them a sense of satisfaction, and see how it works out. It's time for them to be responsible for creating their own happiness. Gaining recognition. From past lives, Aries North Node people are accustomed to helping others, supporting others' ideas, and carrying others' projects through to completion, so they understand completion energy. However, in this incarnation, it's their job to start things. They need to initiate and then let others carry on. If others don't come along to help, then it's fine for them to take sole responsibility. But if others do show up, their job is to allow others to support them and complete things for them so they can get the ball rolling onto the next idea. Sometimes these folks don't want to give their project to others because they fear someone else will get the recognition. They think that if someone else can do it, they are less valuable. They also worry that others will take over and leave them behind. They ask themselves, what do I do then? What is my job? What is my importance? These reactions are an outgrowth of painful misunderstandings that arise when Aries North Node people commingle their identity with others. To restore the equilibrium, they need to separate themselves so they can clearly see the role they're playing and the roles other people are playing. Then they can feel their worth in discovering the seed idea and let other people bring the idea to fruition. Sometimes their desire for taking credit and gaining recognition becomes so strong that they repel the creative energy of others who might have made the idea better and more profitable. If Aries North Node's idea is truly potent, other people will be drawn to support it, and each will bring his own or her own special talents. If Aries North Node people want their own ideas to become reality, they must acknowledge the individual talents of the people they have attracted. By recognizing others' special talents, they can learn to validate others without diminishing themselves. Occasionally, Aries North Node people become so preoccupied with getting the credit that they try to diminish the importance of others' contributions. They want all the credit. Of course, if they want all the credit, they have to take all the responsibility and do all the work. So a lot of their ideas never bear fruit. They never need to realize that, they need to realize that the most important thing is that their original idea gets recognition, that the seed idea is actualized and spread to the widest possible audience. But for that to happen, they need to step out of the way and allow others to help. This is a role reversal for Aries North Nodes. They are the leaders, but must follow others to support them and promote their ideas. Since it's their destiny to develop a sense of identity in this lifetime, in a way their desire for recognition is an attempt to establish a sense of self. However, motive determines the result. If their motive is satisfaction and self-discovery, it is correct and they will win. If their motive is to win recognition from others, then they're still hooked on needing feedback for their sense of self-worth. They need to release the idea that others must recognize them in order for them to recognize themselves and begin directly giving themselves credit. The irony is that when they let go of control and begin recognizing the special talents of those who are helping them, others will be inspired to contribute more, and the entire project will be permeated with love, and no one else can do their job. They are discovering the seed ideas for everyone else to build on. Grounding. Aries North Node people need a grounded, structured existence to enable them to share their message of love with the world. The key is in releasing preconceived images of the way in which love can be expressed. If they limit the way they express themselves to fit their ideas of love, harmonious, gentle, sensitive, caring, giving, compassionate, etc., they're going to miss the boat because love extends beyond the boundaries of any definitions. If a child is crossing the street in the path of an oncoming car, love may involve grabbing their arm and roughly jerking him out of the way. These folks already know that love is the only reality and all else is illusion. Thus, they are learning to trust that their impulses will be the correct expression of love in each situation. When these natives follow the feelings of love and appreciation within themselves, they are being themselves. However, they need to be grounded with the energy so that it's a solid place for them rather than a state of being that allows them to be pushed around by others. Aries North Node people have a need to experience this love with others. Their challenge is to maintain the integrity of their own inner being. The irony is that being just the way they are will teach others and evoke feelings of love. To do this, these folks must give up trying to manipulate the other person's view of them and focus instead on being themselves with as much authenticity and integrity as possible in each moment. It seems hard at first, and it takes discipline and gently reminding themselves to practice their new focus. But ultimately, they can only come from an honest, selfless place by staying true to themselves. Routines. One thing that helps these folks stay grounded is to be aware of their bodies, allowing their bodies to be a natural boundary that gives them a sense of self. They have a tendency to get into other people's consciousness and lose a sense of their own center. So it's healthy for them to exercise regularly in order to stay more grounded and experience the feeling of balance and harmony they need. Having a routine is also very good for them. It's a way to check in with themselves every day. It can be very mundane, making the bed first thing in the morning, making coffee, opening the blinds, following a daily exercise routine, meditating, preparing breakfast, walking the dog. Their tendency is to make the bed one day, and then the next day partially make the bed. The third day, not make it at all, and the fourth day make it, maybe. Inconsistency or lack of routine undermine their personal strength, so daily consistency in the routine is important. Additionally, they could have a weekly routine or ritual. Once a week, they go to their place of worship or meet the same group of friends for lunch. This will counter their tendency to feel victimized by the randomness of life. It will give them a sense of structure and discipline emanating from within. Rather than floating in and out of other people's energy and consciousness, a routine helps enhance their own identity. However, Aries North Node people despise routine, and for good reason. In past lives, having a routine would make them less available to support others whenever they were needed. They didn't develop their own routines, their own life, so that they could more easily adjust to others' needs. But in this incarnation, it's to their advantage to develop strong routines and allow others to adapt to them. Also, having their own routines keeps them from falling into other people's routines. The discipline this develops is strengthening for them. It evokes the warrior in them, and they feel great about it. Exploring hobbies and talents is also a good way to develop a sense of self. As Aries North Node people spend time on their own interest apart from their primary relationship, their identity blossoms. They need to develop these talents through consistent application, regularly taking the time to do the things that bring a sense of personal satisfaction. For example, if they have artistic talents, they might enroll in an art class. If their talent is music, they might take lessons. If they love dancing, they might take a dance class or go dancing regularly with their partner or friends. Self-discipline. Aries North Node's sense of being grounded involves self-discipline. Everything that will work to their advantage requires discipline. Spending time alone on a daily basis, following a few self-chosen routines to make their lives strong, and remembering to appreciate themselves. One experiment that will help these folks practice self-discipline and checking in with themselves is to become aware of their eating habits. The idea is to not eat unconsciously out of boredom or to cope with feelings, but to notice when their body is hungry and then tune into what their bodies would like to eat. They can use visualization in this. They can imagine having a bite of a salad and noticing how their bodies feel in response. They imagine soup in their mouth or a sandwich or fruit or mashed potatoes. They can tell how their bodies will respond. Aries North Node people are so sensitive that when they visualize eating a particular food, their body will actually tell them whether that food will make them feel good or sluggish or energetic. Then they can eat depending on what they want to experience at the time. But they are so out of touch with themselves that even this process will be challenging at first. They may have to work on it, yet when they do it, it's very satisfying and will strengthen their connection with themselves. Self-discipline is not a punishment, it's a practice. It involves strengthening the take charge muscles and doing things on a habitual basis that promote strength, health, and well-being. These folks can use self-discipline as a tool to uncover their identity. Consciously practicing self-discipline will evoke the warrior within them in a balanced and harmonious way. On a spiritual level, Aries North Node people are discovering who they really are, allowing a new innate and natural identity to emerge. However, sometimes they can use their lack of clear identity to their advantage in breaking troublesome habits. One easy way for these folks to practice self-discipline is simply through reinventing their identity. Since they have no preconceived rigid perception of themselves, by changing their identity in their own minds, they can make healthy changes in their lives. For example, I had a client with this nodal position who was not a smoker in his youth, but who suddenly began smoking heavily for 5 years prior to my seeing him. One day he suddenly stopped smoking with no side effects or withdrawal symptoms. He simply remembered himself as a non-smoker. Wow. Establishing one's center. Relationship as center. Aries North Node people have had so many lifetimes of identifying with others that they've confused their center, their inner sense of self, with that of their partner. They are hypersensitive to the partner's moods because the other person actually rests at their center. Thus, if the partner is unhappy or dissatisfied, Aries North Node will feel it. He can spend all his time and energy trying to make his partner happy so that his own sense of well-being and contentment remains undisturbed. The problem is that nobody can take on the responsibility for making another person happy. The best one can do is appease the partner, adding an ingredient that will temporarily change the mood, but the partner must then constantly be appeased in order to stay happy. And it isn't set up to work that way for Aries North Nodes in this lifetime. I don't think that works for anybody personally, but that's just me. Actually, the growth required of them is best achieved by de-emphasizing the idea that relationships are necessary for their survival. They are learning to stand alone and relate to others from a new perspective. However, despite their sensitivity, these folks are often blissfully ignorant about other people, what motivates them, what they're seeking, what kind of success they would like to achieve. Sometimes they only see the other person and themselves on a superficial level of having immediate needs and desires that are or are not satisfied. They only see deeply enough into the other person's identity to manipulate them into keeping the mood harmonious. This is why people surprise or disappoint Aries North Nodes. They never saw who the other person really was. In many ways, Aries North Node people are not relating to the other person at all. They're relating to the relationship between themselves and the other person. This does not lead to truly helping their partner or themselves to grow. The relationship is not an entity. It can't grow unless the two individuals grow. Thus, no matter how much time and energy these folks devote to the relationship, it cannot give back to them. So they're better off examining the needs for autonomy and individual creative expression of both partners. By encouraging and inspiring the other person to achieve results on his or her own, they free both the partner and themselves to evolve as individuals. Another drawback to Aries North Node focusing on the relationship rather than on the other individual is that they can't really validate their partner's identity. When Aries North Node people believe in their partner's ability to be self-sufficient, rather than constantly appeasing them, reassuring them, or picking up the slack, they'll begin to notice the other person's strengths and can encourage them to exercise those strengths. This sets the stage for also seeing themselves on a deeper level, noticing their own strengths, and pursuing their own impulses for growth. Wow, this is great. Fairness and self-assertion. Aries North Node people are preoccupied with ideals of justice and fairness. When they think something is unjust, they can fly off the handle. They want the world and other people to meet their rigid standards. They figure, I'll play fair with others and others should play fair with me. These folks sincerely wish the world were more just, but it's actually in their best interest that it doesn't work that way because their ideas of justice don't work. They are motivated to act directly from their instincts, their identity, as opposed to being nice. For many incarnations, they've been waiting for a time when it's okay to be themselves, and this is it. In this lifetime, their sense of fairness and justice is not an accurate barometer of whether these folks are on track or whether they have a right to be angry with someone. In fact, when they get off their high horse about injustice or fairness, they are off path. First, their definition of fair has a lot to do with the fact that they sacrifice their needs and desires for others. They constantly violate the boundaries of how much they can give without loss to self. Then in fairness, they expect others to do the same. These natives are learning to stop violating their own natural limits and to not entice others to go beyond their boundaries. Aries North Node people become resentful if they think something isn't fair. If they feel resentment, it's a signal to pull back and recharge. It also signals a need to express their emotions. I seem to be feeling resentful, so I'm going to take some time by myself and work it out. Honest expression validates and strengthens their sense of identity. It also gives the other person a chance to become aware of Aries North Node's needs and boundaries. From the other person's response, the native has a clearer idea of who they're dealing with. If the other person says, "Did I say something that offended you?" Aries North Node has the opportunity to work it out on the spot. They cannot expect others to be as sensitive as they are, since others have had different past life experiences. But once they openly express themselves, they can tell from the other person's response how much self-assertion will be necessary before the other person hears him and honors his needs. Aries North Node people are learning to be assertive in a constructive way that promotes fairness through clear self-expression. For example, I had an Aries North Node client who was in the process of purchasing, through rather large monthly payments, some real estate from a friend of hers. One day the friend approached her with a need for money for an unexpected problem, and my client immediately gave her the money, the instinctive Aries North Node desire to help and share. She assumed the other person would either repay it or deduct the amount from her next payment. However, her friend never repaid or acknowledged that money in any way. My client felt hurt and resentful, but never brought the matter up. Naturally, she emotionally distanced herself from her one-time friend. This type of incident seems to occur frequently in Aries North Node people's lives. As a consequence, they feel let down by others. From a broader point of view, this is life's way of teaching these folks to assert themselves. They need to take responsibility for themselves and their interactions with others. In the example, when the friend approached her, my client could have said, "Sure, I'll just take the amount off my next payment, or I could take a third off on the next 3 payments, or what will work best for you?" In this way, she could have satisfied her need to share and to take care of herself in a direct, honest, fair way. Aries North Node people truly do love to give. It is their nature, but their motive needs to be love, not creating codependence. Their giving must be pure, without an expectation of result, in order for them to be free of disappointment in their relationships. If they find that they're giving in an imbalanced way, they can openly bargain with their partner so that both people's needs are equitably met. It's when they expect others to reciprocate without letting them know exactly what they expect that they go off track. They need to give their silent expectations a voice. It's their job to be sure things are fair by asserting themselves and letting others know what they expect in return for their giving. If they do this, they'll feel happy because they were the ones who ensured that fairness came about. This builds their confidence. Rather than being displeased with others, they will be pleased with themselves. Since they are the ones who know about fairness, they can teach others by openly stating their standards. They are not only giving to the other person, but also sharing their knowledge of how to give and take in relationships. These folks can access the fresh energy that is emerging in this lifetime through honest self-assertion, not by waiting and reacting to the expectations of others, but by getting in touch with and expressing the impulses of their own being. Even though their sensitivity to others is strong, they must continue to build a sense of their own identity. Through practicing self-sufficiency, a new confidence will emerge, empowering them to relate to others in healthy and innovative ways. I'm just going to check what time we're at. Let's see. Looks like we're getting close to maybe an hour here, guys. So I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to change out my battery so that it doesn't just cut off in the middle. And we will continue with the North Node in Aries, page 41, relationship section, which will be very interesting. I'll be right back. And if you're watching this, there will be a part 2 for this chapter. See you in just a moment.